Hey everybody, Lenny here. So, we're gonna start off our series of videos just talking about what other people thought of it and what they liked about it. This is gonna be mainly talk about the critical acclaim of Silent Hill 2. Based at least currently, since it's harder to look back on previous publications with print, digital reviews of Silent Hill 2 are very positive. You have 8 100 out of 100s for this game, as well as many others that are a majority of which being positive. And this is just among the people who review this, who might not even be into horror games. This is a game that's good enough to transcend the barriers of genre to allow everyone to enjoy it, at least from an outside perspective. This basically means that even if this particular review site is not one to be into horror games, most of them were able to acknowledge its benefits. What we can derive from all these reviews is that the amount of content that they had was substantial for its time, the presentation was amazing, and that it was a good challenge while telling an incredibly immersive and effectively emotional story. Over the years, we've had a lot more people look into it and analyze it and be able to come to their own conclusions about what the game means or what it's trying to do effectively. And I use try to do effectively as a very important term because some things in Silent Hill 2 are not very good, and of these things, they are intentionally not good, and they are providing benefits to the game in other areas. One of the things that is noted by many critics across the board, especially in later years, is the controls for combat are not very good, and this is not necessarily a detriment. What I mentioned in the previous video about the horror as a concept is when you are in a situation, the ability to have good control over it or easily defend yourself removes the horror from that. So the fact that the controls for combat are absolute shit half the time means that your option is usually to run. And that doesn't mean that you have to run all the time, because you can defend yourself. It's just that it's clunky, it's not the most speedy or effective way to handle things, and the monsters are just slow enough to where running is always an option, and that they can be dangerous if you encounter them, especially on harder difficulties. This is why the highest regarded games in the series always maintain the tank-style, clunky combat controls, and why the ones that are considered the worst in the series are always ones that have significantly better controls. Even ones that are slightly more well-regarded amongst the newer batch, such as Downpour, still suffer from a problem of people not being able to enjoy the fact that it has easier gameplay and easier combat, in addition to a large amount of many other problems. But what it comes down to is detriments in one area can create strengths in another area, and as long as their strengths are the focus of the game, then it is not a detriment to the quality as a whole. This can be a fashion similar to comedy. If you have a comedy movie that has horror elements in it, it doesn't matter if it's scary, if it's trying to be funny. So even if you have a moment where something that is supposed to be scary happens to not be and you end up laughing at it, if the movie is labeled, marketed, or presented to you as a comedy, then that would be a matter of a efficient trade-off. You trade off one element in order to get strengths in another, and that is essentially some of the best parts of Silent Hill as a whole. What you lack in a narrative that connects it to the other games in the series, you instead gain as a much better character story. What you lack in precise and direct storytelling, you have room for interpretation, philosophy, and many more vague narrative elements, which usually relate to symbolism. The fact that you're able to derive symbolism from the game is because you don't have a direct explanation for all of the events in the game. Another thing that we're going to talk about is something that was later discussed as to one of the strengths of the game, and that is its multiple endings. I mean, if you look here, one person on Metacritic for the reviews says that it was a high selling point for the fact that it had 5 endings. Like, when that came out. That was something that was just beyond the comprehension of people. I mean, we've had games that have come out since then with many, many more endings and many other alternative story paths, especially with the rise of Western developed RPGs. But it's still something to say that it's impressive, because what Silent Hill 2 does right is you never know that you are being evaluated for your ending. It pays attention to your behaviors in the game instead of having checkpoints that you can clearly mark. If you look at games like Mass Effect or Infamous, it becomes very clear what ending you're moving towards because of the fact that it's color-coded and very obvious as to what your moral choices are. It's always red for evil and blue for good, and it's always presented in a way that's so obvious that you don't have to actually worry about any moral dilemmas. Instead, you just need to think of, what ending do I need to see first? Whereas in Silent Hill 2, since you're never given any obvious checkpoints or markers towards what ending you're going towards, you only might discover the fact that you have multiple endings on second playthrough, third playthrough, or just when you decide to look it up afterwards or talk to your friends about it. And this is more relating to the effect of observational changes that's present in psychology. When you know you're being observed, the outcome of your actions will change. It's the same thing as when you're singing in the shower, you sing excellently, gloriously, but as soon as you have to do it in front of people, you might crack up, you might get nervous, you might just choose not to do it at all. Behavior changes based on the situation, and so does the outcome. So the fact that you don't know there's multiple endings, at least the game itself doesn't present it to you, means that it's much more meaningful when you get one of the 6 endings, or at least one of the first 3 when you are first presented with the game. In the end, what makes Silent Hill 2 great is the idea of a full package coming to fruition without having to sacrifice anything that they don't consider to be non-essential. Everything that was there visually was great. Everything that was there from a plot standpoint was great, and everything that was there from a gameplay standpoint was there when you needed it, as much as the capacity that they had to do it from. Because you don't play Silent Hill 2 for the gameplay. You do it for the story, you do it for the atmosphere, you do it for the narrative, and everything in between. So, on that level, Silent Hill 2 approaches the idea of a perfect game. Because if it's not for you, or you want more smooth and precise and intuitive gameplay, that's not a bad thing to want. But if you want to have that, and you fail at it, that is a lot worse than in this case where they never tried to do it, and they let everything else come out as an improvement from their desire to have bad gameplay as a form of conveying emotion and narrative. And also, while we're on the topic of elements coming together, I don't think this game could have had nearly as much of an impact as it did without the gloriously amazing work that is Akira Yamaoka. He makes some of the best music in the video game industry, and it is amazing what he does, especially because, with few exceptions, it is all solo work. Aside from some people coming in to work on the lyrics for the songs that he does, and sometimes getting a few singers to come work on his stuff, every instrument, every note, every single thing you hear with the music is all done by him, by himself. And when you hear some of the amazing tracks, it is breathtaking. There's no way this game could have been as amazingly immersive and impactful without great, memorable music. Because the music is so good that even some people who have never played Silent Hill might recognize the tracks, partially due to the movies, but either way, what it comes down to is Silent Hill 2 is a fantastic game, and this has laid a lot of expectations for what gamers want for future games. They want excellent storytelling, they want a wide amount of content, they want multiple endings, and they just want it to be effective and to kind of gnaw at their inner fears, which is why Silent Hill 3 is very controversial amongst fans. Silent Hill 2 left such a big impact that it basically raised the bar very high for their next attempt. So some people think they did overcome it, some people think they didn't. But the fact that it's so divisive of a topic as to whether or not Silent Hill 3 can surpass Silent Hill 2 is only a testament to the quality of that game, and also any future game. I mean, if you look at other reviewers and other people who look at some of the stuff, one of which being Yahtzee, he will compare Silent Hill 2 as a basis for most other horror games in terms of what they do effectively and what they can do in order to be a good horror game. And it's not, that's literally the definition of a landmark title. You always look back on it for either inspiration or comparison of previous things. I myself look towards Metal Gear Solid when I look at stealth games. I look at Need for Speed Underground 2 when I compare it to open world driving games. Everything that I compare to always has one or two landmark titles of games that I always consider to be the best. And with few exceptions, Silent Hill 2 is a landmark title for many horror gamers out there. So, thank you for watching my talk about the critical analysis and overall reception of Silent Hill 2. I'm looking at another video coming next week, and we're going to delve more into the symbolism of the game and the way that it weaves its plot in and out of this symbolism in order to tell an effective story. And we're also going to present a few theories. Everything we're going to be dealing with next week is more an idea of interpretation. So if you have your own personal interpretation that conflicts with my own or other people's, that is completely okay. That's fine. You can have your own interpretations. These are just the ones that I consider to be either the best or the most logical from my account. But that's what the comments section is for. We're open to any sort of ideas or comments, and depending on what you say, it might be included in the next video. It might even alter what kind of content we're looking for, because this is all freelance right now. Anything can be happening in the next few weeks, so currently we're just looking at next week being entirely about symbolism and theories, with the main one being tying the story of Silent Hill 2 to the rest of the games, while still holding true to its symbolic roots. See you next time.